You know, there are a lot of fruits and vegetables that we think of as iconic in the South, and perhaps where fruit is concerned, none is more iconic than the muscadine. We're a little far north in the Nashville area to be really successful, but I want you to meet a gardener who has been very successful for the last 10 years. So David Sprouse has been growing muscadines up here in Whites Creek, Tennessee, and you've been pretty successful about it.
Yeah, but it's a struggle. This, muscadines in our climate here in Tennessee, it can be a challenge.
But you found a few varieties
Yes.
that are particularly good here. So tell me what those varieties are.
Well, there's two varieties of muscadines in terms of color. There's obviously a purple and a white.
Right.
As far as the purple grapes go, there's a variety called Cowart, which I've had, it seems to can survive our climate. As far as white varieties, Magnolia is a good one, and Carlos is a very good one. And there's a third one that's white called a Fry, and there's an early Fry, a late Fry. One blooms earlier than the other one. I'm not sure which one that I have, but the Fry, even the books say that it doesn't do well in terms of cold weather,
right.
But it has done well for me, from my experience.
For personally, yeah.
So
before we get into the real nuts and bolts of how to grow them, do you have a preference over the red or the white? Have you found something different in them that you really enjoy?
Yeah, probably my favorite tasting grape is probably the oldest one. It's called the Scuppernong, which it was found on the Scuppernong River in North Carolina by some of the early settlers, and its flavor is just outstanding. And what people may not realize too is how big these grapes get. Some bigger than others, but they can get as big as a quarter. This particular variety is called a Noble. It's a purple grape, and it has survived some of our cold winters. I planted it a little bit later than the others, but it's known for its winemaking properties. And the berries ripen more evenly.
Right.
Many muscadines, they do not ripen evenly. You have to pick the berries individually,
right,
which can be an enormous task.
So in this section of the garden, you've got, these are actual grapes, not muscadines, but...
Right, they're American grapes from the Labrusca family. There's two types of American grapes, the muscadine and the Labrusca. Right. These would be like your Concord, your Niagara. This happens to be a Reliance grape. It's a red grape.
A red grape, yeah. So they're still green right now because they're young, but they'll ripen later in the fall. So tell me a little bit about your trellising system and the kind of the care and maintenance of both the grapes and the muscadines.
Well, the American grapes, which would be like your Concord, they generally take a 2-wire system. There's a specific name for that. I don't remember at the moment. But most of those you use what you call cane pruning, which you'll pick a healthy cane from your main trunk there, and each year you get basically 4 canes, sometimes more. You can run a cane down to the lower wire, and a lot of it's done to keep control as well. I mean, I hard prune these pretty vigorously, and you can see that they've done really well. There's still space to walk between the rows, and
right. You're trying to get these to come out. You prune back this way, but you leave the long canes trained.
Yeah, you don't want a long cane just hanging out. Usually you train it to the wire.
And grapes and muscadines and all of these vines are very vigorous vines. So pruning is one of the most important parts of this whole growing process.
I've never gone a season without pruning every vine.
Otherwise, they would just be so overgrown you couldn't walk between the rows. And you've got a good 6 or 8 feet here between this row and the one next to it, and they would easily grow together in a season if they were left unpruned.
Absolutely.
So this is a southern muscadine, our native southern grape, and this is a little bit different beast than than the regular grape, just as far as size and all of that. This is on a little bit different kind of trellising system.
Yes, single wire trellis, from my research, is probably the best for a couple of reasons. One reason, it's easy to maintain, and the other reason, if you have equipment like I do, with lawnmowers going between the rows, it's easier to maintain in that way. Probably the ultimate trellis for a muscadine is what they call a Geneva trellis, which is a double wire up here, and it sits up a little higher. I think the double wire is maybe four feet apart, and you sort of get sort of like a single wire twice, if you want to describe it that way.
Yeah, almost like a clothesline effect.
Yeah, clothesline effect would be a good way to say that. I did have a wire underneath in the beginning, but I tried to do, you know, what happens is the top shades out the bottom. You can see it's so vigorous that you can do that in the beginning and you may maximize the fruit, but as the plant ages, the wire underneath just doesn't, you know.
Right. So if we look up under the foliage, I mean, I'm lifting up 3 or 4 feet of vine here.
Yes.
Is this all one season's growth?
Yes, I prune this what they call spur pruning, which what you really do, you can see some buds right here, 1, 2, 3. You prune it back to approximately 3 buds each cane, and believe it or not, the Muscadine is that aggressive.
Right.
Sometimes you get lazy after you prune a bunch of them, and you'll go through with your shears and get, you know, the bulk of it, and then you'll go back with smaller pruners. But you can see there's, you know, I have a few little extra, but generally you want to keep this to one runner going down.
Right.
But you know, as the vine ages, it's a little more of a challenge to keep it to one runner.
Sure. So what time of year will these ripen?
Well, believe it or not, Muscadines, as other grapes, some ripen early, some ripen mid-season. I would say generally Muscadines are more of a fall.
A fall grape.
Yes.
This is kind of the way I
have
think of them.
You know, even ripen at frost.
Right.
And some of them a little earlier. Probably late August is when you start to see them, and then September,
and then through
it's
September
more
and into early October.
Exactly. And there are actually 2 types of Muscadines. I mean, I'm from the Carolinas. You know, some people say, well, they're Scuppernongs, and some people say, well, they're Muscadines. Well, the Scuppernong actually refers to the white. It was the earliest white variety of Muscadine.
It's an actual variety.
It's an actual variety. But many of the white varieties in general are referred to as Scuppernongs, and, you know, the purple ones as Muscadines, but they're all Muscadines.
Sure. So this is a brand new plant.
Yeah, just planted this spring.
Just planted this spring. And, you know, again here, just to show how much they grow, a brand new little cane, and then you've already got a good 12 or 14 inches of new growth just off of this, and even longer up here.
And what you want to do with a Muscadine, I know this sounds vicious, but you want to get rid of all these little shoots, you know, if you're diligent, but not too much.
Right.
You know, you want to leave some leaves, but you know, in the winter, usually I prune, you know, right before spring. You'll really clean that trunk up.
Right.
And, you know, and
get all of your growth up here to your wires so that you have a good strong trunk.
And train one up to here.
And
the V here is called the crux. You generally want to try to keep it clear, so good ventilation and air circulation. And get those arms trained
going out either way.
On either way.
So there's quite a difference then between a newly planted plant and even just 1 year's worth of growth.
And we can look at one I planted last year.
So 1 year's worth of growth actually already has fruit on it.
Yes.
And has grown 10 to 12 feet.
Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah, exactly.
As much as that. And then eventually will actually take up a whole 20-foot stretch of
it doesn't take it. You know,
trellis.
within 3 years, you can have it trained 20 feet.
20 feet.
Yes, easy.
Yeah. Whereas the American grapes that we looked at a bit ago were planted on 8-foot centers.
Yes.
So, or 10-foot centers maybe.
Yeah, 8 to
These
10
actually
feet.
take up 10 feet in each direction.
Yeah, 20 feet is the ideal spacing
That's
for
amazing.
Muscadines.
I have one more question for you. Sources.
My wife, when we first moved here, she gave me a little pamphlet, and it was from Ison's Nursery in Georgia. She just knew I loved Muscadines. We both grew up in the South, and they happen to be the biggest breeder of Muscadines in the U.S.
Okay. So that's and they do mail order, so you can
mail order. You can go online and buy from them. And they're wonderful people in terms of giving you advice. They've even asked me what, you know, varieties have grown.
How you've done with them.
So I would highly recommend Ison's as a reference for Muscadines.
Excellent. So whether you choose a table grape or our iconic Muscadine, you can grow grapes very successfully in Tennessee.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.